Well, hello everyone. Got going a little bit late, but we are live here now, and I'm here with Josh Rivedal. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Rivedal, close enough.
Rivedal.
Cool.
Here with Josh Rivedal, and this is an interesting guy. I met you. You came to Winona State and spoke with our school about your mental health journey and kind of some of the things you've been doing, and really you're very raw and authentic about your experiences struggling with your own mental health, and how the death of your father by suicide, how that really impacted you too. And your talk just really moved me a lot, especially I've just been someone that's struggled a lot with mental health stuff too, and even this summer has been kind of trickier summer. But yeah, I just wanted to bring you on and learn more about your story and your experiences, and even beyond the mental health stuff. You're an author. um, I know apparently you have a play you've written too. Comedian, so I mean you got your feet in a lot of different areas. Yeah, man, what's it like being involved in so many different things, different creative endeavors?
Exhausting. No, it's great. It's good. It's good, man. Well, first, thanks for having me. This is cool.
Yeah,
Uh,
absolutely.
I'm glad that we're getting a chance to chat and to reconnect. I think I was out your way in Winona in March of this year, so
Yeah, that
in
sounds right.
about 4 months, something like that. Um, Well, yeah, it was great. And I remember having that chat with you. I mean, a chat, not that chat, a chat with you, like by the stage, like right after we just had, it was nice. So I'm glad we reconnected. But yeah, I think, you know, creativity for me, is it started out acting, right? Like I was really excited about that 14, 15, 16, up through age 19. And I was, I was excited about it to 27, 28, but like I'm 39 now. But at first it was an escape. Like it was like, all right, this is what I know. This is what I've been exposed to. I grew up in a family that sang. They
Mm,
sang in church a lot, and then I, was doing that. But high school, I started singing in choirs and college choirs and all state choirs and different things like that, and theater. And it was an escape. So it wasn't even pure. There was something else to it, and then it became more creative, and then it became an art form, and then it became a way to help and to give back. And then so like 22, I wasn't really happy with the roles I was getting. I was still getting my feet wet in the acting world. I was like 3 years in as a professional, so I started writing and then producing a little theater as well in New York City, and that's kind of where things started to get interesting a little bit more, because I was working as an actor here and there, and I had a couple years where it was just acting, which was great. But then it was like I started choosing what I wanted to do, and the first couple things out were not good,
mm,
right? Like the writing, and then I 25, 26, when my dad passed away. Uh, I wrote a one man show where I play 16 characters, singing in a bit, embellished story of my life, and that did really well. That toured off and on for about 10 years, and then there was a couple of other plays that I wrote before and after that got some workshop. They were workshop in New York, and then I got commissioned to write a Spanish language Christmas musical. I'm not fully bilingual, so like there was a little help needed. Um,
sure.
but they got produced in Miami in 2013. Yeah. So, I've been a playwright. It's been a little while since I've written anything on that. And then I write books. And that was a progression of doing, the talks that I do around mental health and suicide prevention. And then and then the comedy kind of came from that and came from the acting. And so it all kind of, and then I'm playing around with food these days, doing some stuff with cooking and mental health. So it's good. It's a way to, like, I need to stay creative, but it's also
Mm,
like because I have so many interests, I got to find a way to tie them all together. And
sure.
so eh, it's a lot of it is mental health related. That's the way that I string them all together these days. Otherwise, it's really hard to do that stuff. Just because to get your brain to toggle back and forth between these different things, it's hard enough as it is. So
Mm.
it's great. I love it. It piques my curiosity. I learn a lot. I'm growing. It's constant self examination and also finding ways to give back and to just to refine. So
Yeah. One thing you said there that in particular kind of stuck out to me towards the beginning, you mentioned how uh, at the beginning, did you say was the creative stuff was an escape for you?
yeah,
Like, in what sense was it an escape?
yeah. That's a great question. I think on a small level, the escape was I didn't love who I was, like very insecure. Experienced emotional and physical abuse at times, more emotional from my father growing up, especially before the age of 14. And then I just stopped being at home. I was working and I found, a lot of reasons not to be there. So I didn't experience a lot of that, but that stays with you. That's some major, major childhood trauma. At least for me, it was. And so doing that stuff, on a small level was like, I'm not comfortable with who I am, so I get to be somebody else. But also there was an element of
Okay.
yeah, there was
So,
also
like in the acting sense of like
a little
being,
yeah,
yeah,
a
it
little
felt
bit.
good to explore being someone that wasn't Josh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then there was another element to it where it was like, if I do more, if
Mm,
I achieve, if I get the lead, which I was getting in high school, and working after high school, and it was like if I do these things, if I achieve, then I have value, right? And if I have value, then that's kind of an escape. And then it was also in a way to escape from home. It was a way to, if I could make money doing this and maybe get rich, which I didn't. But if I could, that was the only I wasn't exposed to a lot of other things or um at the time I was like, if I do this, I'll escape the reality that I'm living in. When in truth, and it took me a long time to figure this out, like the way to escape reality is not to escape; it's to go through it. It's
mm,
to work through these things that are bothering you, and uh, and just confronting the things that you think you need to run away from. You need to embrace them and not run from them. So
mm.
yeah,
I've definitely noticed that approach of actually kind of facing your life and tackling and taking care of the things that are amiss or that are bothering you, for me, has been like what I've found to be helpful too. Because I feel like when I go through times when I'm struggling, there's these things like diet and exercise and different things that are helpful, and I've seen the benefits of those.
yeah,
But I found the biggest uh, issue for me has been when I'm just not facing things.
mm,
Um, whether it be kind of like a job I'm not liking or just something I feel like I got to say to someone that I'm scared to do. Like those things, I find for me, they just start gnawing at me, and not doing something about them, I find myself going downhill. So
yeah.
I don't know if that's
I
something
can
similar.
I can relate to that, absolutely. Probably for the first 27, 8 years of my life, prior to getting into this work, and even doing this work, you're constantly learning and growing. I'm not a finished product just because I get on stage and talk about this. I'm
Yeah.
way advanced, for probably for most people. But I'm also coming from some depths too. Like I've had to climb further, I think, in some levels because of some of the trauma. Not as much as some, definitely more than others. It's not a competition, but
Mhm.
for sure, man. Yeah, like not dealing with stuff and some of that
Mm,
Avoidance, in like much younger years, I had a couple of years where I drank too much because I wasn't dealing, or smoked too much pot, not using it for its intended, like medicinal or, to help with
yeah.
occasional sleep. And then just like, I'm uncomfortable at 7:30 at night. I don't really want to engage, and I'm uncomfortable with the things I'm feeling. And I should talk to this person. I should
Yes.
confront that thing.
Yes.
um, I should, think about why I'm uncomfortable for seemingly no reason, but I'm not. And then the next,
Mhm.
but the problems stay, right? So then,
Mhm.
like, what do you do? All right, you have to do some me at least, Josh. You have to do some mental acrobatics, like, um, you know, I'm gonna learn something. This discomfort means I'm gonna learn something. That's a good thing, right? Like, surrendering to it, as well. Be like, hey, like, you're trying to protect me. Whatever this feeling is, it's trying to help me. It's not trying to hurt me. The
Mhm.
universe got my back. There's a lot of things, and then checking in, and then doing all the extracurricular stuff. You mentioned like diet, exercise, things like that. There's certain things that make these things an on ramp a little bit easier. If I'm drinking and chugging tons of coffee to an extreme, like if you're doing like, upper drugs or something like that, it's going to make it a lot harder, right? So I'm doing things that are so I'm not doing drugs, right? I'm, no judgment if you are, but I'm not. And I'm eating differently. I'm trying to sleep differently. I'm engaging in relationships and relationship with myself differently. So it's a challenge, man. It's a challenge for sure. I can relate to
Mhm.
what you're talking about for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's something that I feel like you got to have consistent progress in, or like, I mean, because I feel like we could all kind of lapse into episodes like that if we just start neglecting stuff or what have you, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. Consistent effort, just little things, right? Daily. Like, I mean, for me, just something little, like I'm lifting these two 30-pound barbells every day for the past 2 weeks. Like, I'm staying consistent. I cut my coffee down from 8 cups to four. Like, it's not perfect, but like I'm sticking with that, right? So it's not gonna make or break my life, but it's where I want to be, right? So
Yeah, and it'll give you some benefits for sure, and you also feel like, okay, I'm actually doing stuff that's constructive and healthy for me.
that's right. That's right.
I'm curious too, like what, because you mentioned having, I don't know, just kind of some struggles and challenges and stuff. Well, when did things? Well, first off, kind of how did you get to that place in the first place, and then what helped you kind of climb out of there?
Yeah. I mean, as far as challenges, I mean, they come up,
Yeah, they don't end.
they don't end, and that's not a bad thing necessarily, because right, like it's silly, right? Because I think growing up I was like, oh, it'll slow down when
Mhm.
tomorrow, or things will kind of get different, or I once this happens, it's smooth sailing. Like, no, it's not. uh and and as difficult as that is, and I can laugh about it, it's a little painful at the time when you're going through it, but at the same time, like, I think having that knowledge and be like, look, this is life, like,
Mm.
things are gonna go sideways often or semi often, and so it's a matter of the tools that you equip yourself with, and staying consistent with that, right? And not falling off of those tools just because there's not something crappy going on right now. So like, I just got back from yoga. Like, I feel
Mhm.
good. I felt good before I went to yoga, but I'm not going to yoga because I feel bad. I'm going to yoga because I want to maintain, right? Like,
Mm.
I'm calling a friend every week, or I'm texting someone I love them, or I'm volunteering twice a month at XYZ, not because I feel bad, but because I'm trying to maintain, right? So like,
Wow, yeah.
so it's and so then when the crap does happen, the on ramp into healing
Mhm.
and recovery and mitigating distress, uh the on ramp is not so steep. right? So it's like I've been doing all this stuff and something bad happens, and instead of like I wasn't doing it, it's really hard and I got to ramp up. It's like no, it's like this and like this. It's a little
Mm,
steep, but not as steep, right? So like when did the stuff happen? I don't know. Probably when I was in the womb, man. But the first very memorable time was after my dad died, like almost 2 years after. I nearly attempted suicide for a number of reasons. Two undiagnosed and untreated mental illnesses. Had they been treated, had I been known about them and paid attention to them and worked with them, I would have been fine. You know,
mm,
multiple major changes and not having these tools and this sort of this on ramp I'm talking about, or that I've been talking about. Um, Untreated, unmanaged, untalked about childhood trauma, adult trauma, like all that's this confluence of all these different things, right? And so coming out of that, which took some time, and I talked a little bit about this in the talk at Winona State, but just that I had to basically kind of learn how to walk again. So it was like sort of like mostly it was at the beginning it was really like trial and error, just throwing stuff up against the wall, doing a lot of research,
mm,
and then getting really educated on mental health, and then finally getting into counseling a couple months later. But at the with putting all that stuff together and just like just learning about resilience and acts of service and how that can be helpful, not just to other people but to oneself, and um gratitude and self-care and on and on and on and on, and that basket of coping skills grows, and it's like a cornucopia on steroids, I guess now, as best I can. But it doesn't mean I don't still have challenges, right? So when did it start?
mhm,
I think that's one of the most memorable. But in between, man, there's been a partner with cancer, who I took care of for a while. She's fine. We're not together anymore. Another partner slash marriage that fell apart quickly. That was really hard. There was a
mm,
homicide in there that was really hard. The divorce was hard. Some relationships and breakups. There's a lot of different things that have happened. Um, and sometimes because I live with anxiety, generalized anxiety disorder. Um, Sometimes there's a severe feeling of anxiety, not too long, but at the time it feels horrible and like a pit. But like I can't put a finger on why I'm feeling like I'm in distress, but I have to engage with all those coping skills and kind of work through it, and then it subsides, over a week, 2 weeks, a month. So
mm.
yeah.
And how often does that kind of come up for you? That intense level of anxiety?
Lately, probably twice a year.
Okay.
Once a year, where it's that level. Like I often feel a low level.
And I feel like everyone probably experiences some like I feel like that just little underlying throb to one degree or another.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Really?
No, I think
Hmm,
that has to do with the disorder actually. Um,
interesting.
yeah, I think it'll pop up, but if not do whatever
Hmm.
you want, but if you think that everyone does, it might be time to see if there's a diagnosis at hand, which is and if there is, there is, and if there isn't, there isn't.
Oh, I know I definitely have
Yeah,
a good amount of
yeah.
anxiety. Yeah.
But I
Uh,
don't I don't think it's I don't
hmm,
say normal as a judgment call, but I don't think
yeah.
that's normal, right? I
Yeah.
think it has to do with a condition, a chronic condition, yeah. So
So with that, do you take any medication for your anxiety?
I don't. I'm not against it by
Mhm.
any means, but and I may at some point. In my estimation, I don't know that it's severe enough. It doesn't feel like it to me. I mean, I've never gauged that. I've never lived inside of anyone else's body and brain, so I don't actually know.
Yeah.
But I feel like what I manage and live with is manageable. It's difficult at times, and then
Mhm.
things, when those more severe moments pop up, again, it's maintenance. So when I say 2 3 weeks, whatever, it's been less than that lately. Because of the on ramp is not as steep as it used to be, right? So it's what I'm eating, it's how I'm sleeping. It's, I'm taking walks, I'm calling people, engaging in service, trying to stay creative, on and on and on and on.
Mm-hmm.
Mental acrobatics, exercise, doing these things when I don't feel like it as well. Can be very helpful. So it's, in a sense, it's semi-holistic. I'm not going to recommend that for anybody else, but do that stuff. But if it's for some reason you need to take medication, then take it. Do your
Sure.
research, know the side effects, monitor it, have not just a friend, but a friend, but also an advocate, also a physician, also psychologist. Like, get your whole team together if you have one, and make sure they know what's going on with you, and that everyone's in lockstep about the medication that you're taking. Yeah,
Well, I like how you talk too about maintaining your healthy habits even when you're like doing well.
yeah,
And I feel like that's something that I've noticed for me that I'll lapse in because I've gone through periods where I've been I'll use diet for example, like eating really well and like I'm feeling good and I felt like I've kind of gone from like here up to here, but then I start just I don't know, eventually I'm like, oh well. I feel like sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm feeling good. Now I'll go eat some like stuff, more junk food or stuff that doesn't make me feel as good. And then I'll start feeling like I use kind of the when I'm feeling bad to motivate me to like feel better, but to like constantly maintain
yeah,
um those good habits even uh when it doesn't feel like, because sometimes I'm like, well, I feel all right. I feel like I can deal with a little bit of,
yeah,
eating some junk and not feeling the greatest for a little
yeah.
bit. I suppose that's where like some discipline comes in too.
It's tough. I can relate to that. Discipline, maybe. I mean, research how to form habits, and it's sometimes it's not about you. Sometimes it's about the box that you live in, that we live in,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes it's about setting up systems rather than habits, right? So making it easier for yourself. Uh, for instance, a friend of mine has an issue with porn. That's what he says. That's his claim. So he's like, I have a blocker. Nothing can get in it. I don't have the password for it anymore, so
Oh,
I can't
wow.
get there. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like that kind of a thing. You know, some people have problems with spending, so they put spending limits on their card. Right. Like if you have a hard time running, the first thing that touches your feet in the morning is your running shoes. So you're gonna slip
Yeah.
those in, and you're like, okay, I guess I'll do it. Right. So sometimes it's about systems.
Yeah. Set yourself up
Yeah, for
to
success.
succeed in those ways.
Yeah.
Um, I want to ask you more about like your experience as a mental health speaker too. Like how often are you going around, talking with universities or other groups of people? And
Yeah.
what's that like doing that?
It's great. I love it. It's probably about 50 times a year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite a bit. A good chunk of that is universities, like a really big chunk of that. And then I do
Mm,
some high schools. I do a few middle schools in there. I will do a lot. I've been doing a fair amount of workplace staff stuff. In like community colleges. So I'm talking to community college staff and high school staff.
mhm.
I'll do conferences. I've been working with a lot of dentists, like dentist conferences and things like that lately too.
Okay.
Um, so it's pretty wonderful. Yeah, it's really nice to connect with people in that way. Um, Often, but not always, I'll throw a little stand up on the front end of it to kind of as an icebreaker, as a sort of a way to do something different, be a novelty, get them to trust what I'm saying and engage really more so than anything. But it's pretty great. Like I've been doing it for 12 years. I think at this point delivered close to 600 presentations in the 12 years. Sometimes it's like there's like the school will have me do two things in a day or something.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where like some of the numbers get a little inflated. But like 46 U.S. states I've spoken in. One, two, three, 4 Canadian provinces. England, and Australia. And so it's just, getting to connect with students and staff and people. And I released a whole book series, like five books to how many stories? 120, 40, 60. It's about 160, maybe 155 authors of short stories. And it was kind of like Chicken Soup for the Soul. And there's a lot of the people in these books, like, they're talking about overcoming obstacles, what they learn in the aftermath. It's the
Mm.
Impossible Project book series, but it's a lot of them are people I met on the road doing
Mm.
talks, and they're sharing stories with them. I'm like, hey, like that would be great for this book. Like
Oh,
it'd be
very cool.
wonderful, that vulnerability if they felt comfortable with it. So I've made some really great friends. I have a room or a couch to sleep on in probably about 10 states at least.
That's awesome.
I'm going to see a friend, if it's a family, who are dear friends now in Missouri, and I've spent holidays with them, and I met them doing this work. I have some dear friends I see a lot in Wisconsin, a few other places, but it's pretty nice. Like there's a lot of fringe benefits to doing what I do.
Totally. And so when you're doing these talks, like what are you what are you sharing with people, or like what are you hoping for people to get out of it?
I mean, broad strokes, world peace, but honestly, it's inner peace, it's hope,
Mm.
it's healing, it's you're not alone. I
Mm.
think when we go through stuff in life, um, and I can relate to this myself, and sometimes I have tinges of this even now. If I go through, I'm like, I'm the only one, I'm the only idiot, I'm the only fill in the blank. Of wait a minute, no, so that connection is really important. I think I hear this a lot, and I used to connect to it more, but I think because I'm in the field a lot more, and I'm it doesn't resonate with me as much, but I hear that being a male doing this work is also really important, and it is, but
Mm.
in the binary or whatever, but like just that, I think we don't see cis straight men talking about this stuff too.
Yeah. Yeah, not as much.
And
Mhm.
there's a bunch of us hanging around. And there's a lot of cis straight men, and they're we're important. All of us are important. But like if you
Mhm.
sort of slice that up as its own demographic, uh, especially the white side, you get old, in your 60s, 70s, and 80s. Like that's the highest rate of suicide of all demographics, at least that are recorded in the United States. So we got some work to do, right? So, but that's not the only people that I'm reaching, but just letting people know, somebody who typically has maybe resting bro face, uh,
Never
is
heard that. That's
no.
funny.
Well, now you've heard it. You've heard it here. That we've all got work to do, no matter how you present and how you look. Like I've presented at juvenile detention centers twice. Uh,
Mm.
and I don't look like a lot of the people in there. Some I do, and I remember hearing some of the whispers. They weren't really whispers, but it was like, man, this guy doesn't know, he doesn't. And they were like kind of talking smack about me. And then I told my story, and they're like, whoa, like this guy's been through some similar stuff we have, right? So like, there's a relatability. Like you're not alone.
Mm.
Like this, whatever you're going through is not your last stop. You have value. You have purpose. You might not know what that is at the moment, but we need you. We're interdependent. Like, I hate literally, but like we're literally interdependent. We rely on one another. When I don't do well, we don't do well. When you don't do well, we don't do well or as well, right? And like, I wish that was more pervasive because it's true. That thought was more true because we all share this planet, and we all need to do better first for ourselves and then for one another. So,
Yeah, definitely. Like your benefit is my benefit, right?
right.
Like you being happy helps me be happier too,
That's right.
for sure.
That's right.
Like And two, with I don't know, setting up if you're doing like 50 talks a year, I'm even just curious, like logistically, how do you go about setting that up? Do you have someone that like helps you, or is that all you?
It's all me.
Oh, I imagine that's a ton of work.
It's a lot of work. Yeah, I
And
have.
like hotels and flights
Yeah,
and
I do all
oh
that.
man.
It's I thought about getting an assistant, but like I got it down to a science at this point.
I
And
suppose if you've been doing it that long, yeah.
yeah, and I know this airline versus that airline, when to fly, when not to fly,
Sure.
when to drive, within a certain amount of hours and distance and stuff like that. It's a little bit of a pain in the butt though. Like it takes some time, and I book all throughout the year, right? So it would be hard to have an assistant because it'd be also like, hey, I just booked this thing 3 weeks out. I haven't booked travel for this other thing, even though I should have, but I waited because this other place has said they want it and they're only 60 miles away. So it gets a little convoluted and a little funky, but like it's not terrible. Like, I've made it work thus
Yeah.
far. But I'm always trying to find ways to reduce the friction, right? So like if I can these days 6 hours, if it's within 6, maybe 7 hours, I'm driving. I'm if I'm flying, I got TSA pre-check. I'm probably like this close to like just leveling up on all the airlines and just being like, screw it, I'll pay the extra money to be whatever status it is, so I don't have to like be herded like
Yeah.
and like let me get a breakfast in the morning. Just make it all easy,
The Mile
So
High Club.
whatever, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, there's something else I was gonna ask. It lapsed. Well, maybe just like or oh, how did you? I mean, how did you become a mental health speaker too? Because it doesn't seem like someone you can just like people just book you just cause like how did you even get started being a speaker? And I saw too, just in the bio you had as well that you have suicide prevention curriculum that's taught. Can't remember is it Washington State, maybe other places too. But
Yeah,
like how, yeah, I'm curious about those things as well.
sure. I'll start with the first one. So I initially I had this idea because I had the one person show that's it's like a 60-minute show in one incarnation, 75 minutes in a different incarnation. Did really well in New York City, outside of Philadelphia. And then when I was doing that, and this was prior to me being in crisis, so it was in between my dad's death and me being in crisis. And people after the show were connecting with me who are survivors of suicide loss. So like most of the show is a comedy, coming of age, quirky, fun. Um, the end talks about my dad's death. And so then people were coming up and connecting me as survivor with me as survivors of loss, suicide loss. And I was present with them to a degree, but I didn't understand it at the time. And then after I went through my crisis, I was like, wait a minute, that thing that I was doing that I'm still doing, that could be really healing and helpful and hopeful. And
Mm,
all that. So I could probably condense that, get trained, learn about this stuff, figure out the focus that I want to give it, put like a Q&A on the back end and maybe invite some like experts, psychologists, whatever. And so I did that. That was the initial way to do it. And I did it like that for a bunch of years.
mm,
And so first did it at Baruch College in New York City in May of 2011, like 4 months after nearly 3 months after nearly attempting suicide. And in between, I was putting together the concept and I was emailing people, but this concept, this idea, and like people didn't really know what it was. And then finally, the school that I was attending at the time, actually, the psych department picked it up, and I didn't know how it was going to go. It was kind of a test run. I filmed it, and a young man waited till everyone left, and he came up to me afterwards. Was like, "Hey, I've been depressed for as long as I can remember and suicidal for a couple of months, and I thought those were normal. I know they're not. Now I'm going to go get help at the counseling center." And I was like, "Whoa, man!" And I was glad to talk to him, and we chatted for a bit, and he went his way, and then I was like, "Man, you know what? I got to keep doing this."
Mm,
So that's the on ramp, and then I just started getting trained in various suicide prevention modalities. Looking for any opportunity to get better, to grow, to enhance the credentials, to learn, have a bigger knowledge base. Um, the curriculum that I have is the one in Washington State. So I saw a couple of years ago that that they have, a 3 hour to 6 hour training in Washington State that's required for various licensures like osteopaths, chiropractors, dentists, and depending on and on and on. And they're the only state that really does that en masse. And
okay.
some of it's like once every 3 years, once forever, stuff like that. And then I think physicians will take a 6 hour, a dentist will take a 3 hour, and then there's different ways that go. So I was like, I'll write the 3 hour, and then I started like getting in touch with the gatekeepers for that, and I just want to know the requirements. So I'd already had some curriculum experience. I wrote a curriculum, a mental health based curriculum called Changing Minds, that I developed between 2015 and 2017. Tested it, did a bunch of stuff with it. A couple of schools picked it up and taught it, and then I sort of pulled it out piecemeal because it's like 5 modules: storytelling and support systems, the basics of mental health, coping skills,
Hmm,
living with mental illness, and suicide prevention. So there's like 5 mods, and and there's multimodal learning. So there's improv, there's writing, there's lecture, but it's mostly facilitation. And so I took some of the suicide prevention stuff, fit it into the requirements that Washington State had, and then like just developed the rest of it, put it together. They reviewed it. They asked for some small changes,
hmm,
and
sure.
then it got approved. And then so I've taught it to mainly dentists at this point
Hmm,
because it's 3 hour. So I have a 3 hour curriculum that is taught, that can be taught in Washington State. I have my own Changing Minds curriculum. I have one or two suicide prevention modules in like curriculum modules in a social and emotional learning um, course. It's like a company, Imago, IMAGO, and then
okay.
I think there's still a legal, like a CLE, continuing legal education. So like lawyers have to take certain things in ethics and oration. I mean, there's a lot of things you can take to keep your license. Uh, I have like a mental health thing with a lawyer. It's out there somewhere. So yeah, I have a few curriculum and modules and different things like that. So it's out
Well,
there.
I'm guessing too, what made you good at doing that was just your own experiences feeling really low like that and suicidal yourself. Like, what was it like for you when you were at kind of your lowest points?
Oh man, it was the worst. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, like on my lowest points. I really wouldn't. I was not eating. I wasn't sleeping. I was crying all the time. I had a hard time going anywhere, doing anything. I was losing work. This was, age 26, almost 27. I lost weight that I couldn't afford to lose. I was the worst at everything, even though I wasn't. But the self talk was just so toxic. Um, I think I was drinking and smoking cigarettes excessively. Um, just wasn't coping and dealing, and it was the worst time of my life. And I think in my head I was like, nobody loves or cares about you, and the world would be better off if I weren't in it. Of course, that's not true, but like I was unwell.
Yeah.
My brain was sick
Hmm.
at that time. So um, yeah, so it's pretty awful actually.
And give or take, how long did that last? Where was that
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 was about
bad?
6 weeks. That was about 6 weeks, and then I nearly attempted um, at the end of that 6 weeks, and then I was like, wait a minute, I don't want to die. I just don't want to feel the emotional pain that I'm in. And that didn't make life any easier at that point, but it was like, wait a minute, but there's I can do differently than what's happening right now. Um, and so that's what led me to seek out help. Yeah.
And so then through like seeking out help, is that when things started getting better, kind of little
Yeah.
bit by bit?
Yeah. Yeah. It was first through my mom, who I wasn't close to at all at the time. And then through friends, like I just started reaching out. Like I was like de-isolating, which is not a word, but like I had to like figure
Yeah.
it out. And then I was like, all right, well, I'm going to take a walk as far as, you know, as much as I can walk, because I physically, I was just a little bit emaciated. Eating a little bit when I could eat. Um, uh, sort of I wouldn't say praying exactly, but like talking out loud to the universe in a sense. And then you know, I was in school, so I was, you know, back in school, and then I was like, oh wait a minute, I can get into counseling. That's a thing. I'll try it. And then I was, you know, going through other different modalities of like self education and things like that. So yeah, so for sure, yeah, from that point, things started to get better and better and better. And then, yeah, so 2 steps forward, 1 step back. But I think all
Yeah.
in all, it was about 9 months, not to just the point where was me again, but also to where like I would never get back to that level of despair ever again.
Mm,
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah, it is. Can't
What?
get back there, man.
Yeah. So what? I guess for anyone that, or for when you're talking with people that are really struggling, like what is it that you tell them? What advice would you give them? Or even if there's people now that are listening and are really going through, something challenging, what would you share
Um,
with them? Obviously, it's case by case too, but
would be Well, you asked the advice because usually I wouldn't offer advice. I'd ask if they wanted advice.
oh, okay, yeah,
You know, but I'm just giving context. 'Cause I'm gonna share with you what the advice I would give. I think first I would say what you're going through is normal. You know, it's not normal to want to die, but it's normal to feel the things that you're feeling, right? You're not the only one. You're not alone. And also, and this might be hard to believe, but you're doing the best you can with the information that you have at this given point. You really are. And even if, you know, there is some intentional self-sabotage,
mm,
there's some level of self-protection happening there as well. It's painful to think about and to deal with, but like you're doing the best you can. So I think I'd like to start off with some grace, some self-compassion. Um, and then I would say, you know, think about the people in your world. You know, who is it that you could express a little bit of this to? Who feels like a safe person, right? Or people, and because you want to reach out for help, right? And so that's a piece of the puzzle, you know. What and if you have a hard time thinking about what help looks like, what would it look like if you did feel better? What would the world look like? What would it seem like? What would the day look like? What would the lights look like? How would you taste? How would you smell? Right? Like just starting to engage in the senses, and then maybe some forward thinking as well, right? Because once you start helping people engage in forward thinking, they're a little bit more likely to want to keep their feet on the planet, right?
mm,
Um, and you know, so I'd say connect as best you can, right? And then there's this level of, well, all I do is take. Okay, I can relate to that. I've felt that before. If you feel that way, and it doesn't have to be that you're giving to the person with whom you're asking something from, their time, their energy, whatever. You can still give, you can give to something else, and you can give to the level of what you feel that you're able to at the moment. Like when I was in crisis afterwards, all I could do was open and close the door for this elderly woman in my building, and it wasn't much. I wasn't saving the world, but I felt a little more buoyant, and that helped me feel like I wasn't taking, and all I was
Mm,
doing was taking, right? Because we need that. We need reciprocity as human beings. We need to engage in it. It's part of our core. We've been doing it forever. Animals do it too. Um,
yeah. It's
it's
definitely
really
important to feel like you're doing stuff too and giving.
contributing.
That's a
Yeah,
good point.
yeah.
Mhm.
So if you don't feel like you're giving enough, find some way to give, whether that's a little bit of your time, tying a kid's shoe, texting someone just to say I love you. Hey, how's it going? Right? It's a little like the 12-step model in a sense, right? Not the entire 12-step model, but like you ever hear some of the old timers in a 12-step program, and I mean old timers in the sense they've been around for 6 years, 10 years, or whatever, sober, you know. They'll say, "Oh, the way that I stay sober, not the way, but one of the main ways I stay sober is I help the younger cats, the young heads. I'm helping them out,
Mm,
right?" And they'll do it when they feel like trash and when they want to pick up the drink. Oh no, I'm going to go help this other person, right?
mhm,
That's some of that reciprocity I'm talking about, right? So we're giving sometimes even when we're not in a state where we feel the greatest, because
mm,
it has these intrinsic benefits. It boosts chemicals in the body that boost mood, right? It allows us to feel like we're giving and there's meaning and purpose to what we're doing on the planet, right? You don't have to put a cape on, you know. It can be, it might be something little to you. You don't know if it means the world to somebody else. But get in the habit. And so prior to crisis too, I encourage anybody listening, watching, like get in the habit of giving without keeping score, not at the expense of your self-care, of course, but get in the habit because it's that sort of it's mental health care. It's your own, right? So
mm,
you're boosting chemicals in the body that boost mood, right? You're engaging in a habit that when something goes awry in your life, and it will, you'll have that to lean on. One thing, it's a piece of your safety net. It's not the only piece, but it's habitual. And it's going to make it a little bit easier when you need to reach out for help and you feel like I haven't been giving to my support system. Oh, but I have been driving for the food pantry. I guess it is okay for me to reach out for help. Okay. It's going to make it easier in your head to get to reach out for that help. So get in the habit of giving without
mm.
keeping score.
I suppose then you would say like going around and doing your talks, your mental health talks has helped you in that sense too, of feeling better.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I especially in the beginning, but it also it allows me to to have meaning and purpose
Yeah,
and
purpose.
and doing that. I've ended up volunteering, on the side. Like that's not, I don't volunteer when I talk. It's a living, but like there are ways that I give of myself within the scope of that are beyond business, that I don't get paid for. Like talking to people after, I love it, listening, talking to people via email afterwards, etc. But like I'm talking about, like I volunteer for a food pantry, right? Like I'm looking at a couple of other opportunities if I can fit them in. I give
Mm,
frequently to the people in my support system, like they have a question about a book they're writing, or if they can be, if they can have me as a letter of recommendation or a reference. If they've got a question about this, that, or the other thing that I know a lot of stuff about,
mm,
uh, let me know. I bend my ear. I'm happy to help. Right. So there's ways to give, and that's but yeah, to answer your question, yeah, it in a big sense, the talks are really, really helpful for my own well-being. Yeah.
yeah, rock on, man.
Mm.
I think I just want to ask kind of one more thing and then
Yeah,
we'll wrap up here.
cool.
Um, I'm just curious too, what your daily routine is, or what a day in the life of you looks like, especially just having all the different creative outlets that you
Yeah.
have with being an author and comedian and stuff like that.
Mm.
What's a day in the life like?
Yeah. I wake up, I do a couple of word games on my phone, like Wordle. and then I'll practice some language. I practice a little Spanish, French, and Norwegian.
Nice.
Um, and then I'll meditate a little bit, and I'll do a little exercise, breakfast, um, shower probably at some point in there. And I try to give the morning to comedy. So I'm like watching some for inspiration. I'm writing it. I'm developing it. Try to give it a good hour to 2 hours. That doesn't always make it. I'm finishing up school. Like I'm finally finishing up university.
Hmm.
So I'm in week 4 of week 8 of my last class. So like I'm spending maybe 5-6 hours a week on school. So that's probably an hour to 2 during the Monday to Friday. I edit books as well, so I edit and help people develop and produce their books. So like I probably have 2 to 4 hours of that every day.
Hmm.
I'm reaching out for speaking events, or people are reaching out to me, so we're communicating, going through the sales process and things like that. Um, I do Taekwondo once or twice a week. I'm going to an open mic to test new material out, like once a
Hmm.
week. I am working on 2 new books for myself, and I'm having some help with one. It's a mental health and finance book for college students, and then the other one is a fantasy novel that has some mental health themes to it. Um, Pablo Picasso and the Magical Golden Pendant. So I'm working on that stuff, and then if I can fit in a little, I'm just starting to learn about gardening, trying
Hmm.
to do some indoor stuff. I think I'm gonna try to grow some tomatillos, which are like they look like
Yeah,
green.
I know. I work in the produce department, so I do know what those are. Otherwise, I wouldn't.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna try to start working on growing those inside and start there. And try to check in with friends, see people, if I can. That's usually like a weekend thing. But that's kind of the crux of it, the day to day. Yeah, a lot going
Well, it
on.
sounds like you're kind of your own boss too. Like you're doing all these, you don't have a job or you're working for someone else. How do you like doing that?
It's kick ass, man. It's not for everybody. It's not always easy, but like, man, I take a nap every day for like 25
Yeah.
minutes. No, I don't have to ask anybody if I can do that. I do my laundry during the work day. Sometimes I cook lunch for like I literally cook, like I actually cook. Um, if I want to make a cake, like I made a cake the other day, I was like, I just want to make a cake. So I made a cake during the workday because I was like, I can bump this off to Saturday if I want, so I'll make the cake now. Um,
Sure.
but it's challenging, like I've got no safety net.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's on you.
yeah.
I guess there's no like guaranteed income stream of like, okay, I'll go in and just, work today
Yeah, it's
and I'll get my whatever 150, 200, $300.
right. It's the crude way I've heard it put is you eat what you kill, right? And
Sure.
it's a little bit like that, which isn't a bad thing. Like I've been hunting decently well for a little while, so it's been okay. But there's some points where it's like, man, it's the herd is a little thin these days. But luckily, it hasn't been like that too much. So uh,
Yeah,
yeah, so it's challenging, but it's mostly really great. It's
that's
mostly
awesome, man.
really, yeah.
Do you have any closing comments here? Anything you want to say
Hmm.
as we finish up?
Got a lot of smart ass things to say, but I think I'm gonna save those.
Fair
uh,
enough.
no, man, this was great. This was really cool, man. I love chatting with you. You got some solid interviewer skills,
Thank
and
you.
I didn't know what to expect, so it was really good to hang and to chat. So thanks for the opportunity, and it's a lot of fun. Yeah,
I really enjoyed it too. Thanks for coming on and chatting with me,
yeah, man.
Josh, and best of luck moving forward, man.
Thanks, man. You as well. Appreciate
All
it.
right. We're going to end it here. Thank you, everyone, for
Oh, there's some like
tuning in.
comments in the chat and stuff. I didn't even notice this. Did you know?
Ah, I wasn't looking at the chat.
Do you ever get sleep paralysis? No. Uh, I had some hard times.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had some tough times sleeping in my day, but never paralysis. I take a little cannabis a couple times a week to help with sleep. Trying to get off of that a little bit, just to say that I can. Um, and that was the big one. Love the interview. Cool. Thanks, Lars. Thanks, Nicole. Thanks. Do you know any of these people, Graham?
I know them all.
Oh, it's all your extended family.
Yeah.
Kidding, just kidding.
Well,
Cool.
thanks for the comments, everyone.
Yeah.
Sorry I didn't see them earlier, but yeah.
All right.
Thank you for coming on, Josh. And again, best of luck moving forward.
Likewise. Thanks.
All right.
All right.
Farewell, everyone.